are sort of now treated as inspirational figures, figures who got American democracy rolling. And these people are likewise the salt of the earth, people who are trying to keep government honest. The other narrative you're hearing a lot these days, there was a report just the weekend by a group that has human rights in its name with a forward from the NAACP, is it's a lot of racists and white supremacists and fringe figures and dangerous types, and the candidates who are letting Tea Party events push them along should be distancing themselves, and then if they're going to be responsible, they should put as much distance as they can between themselves and the movement. So who's right? Well, if you want to know, are there extremists involved in Tea Party events, that's easy. You look online and you can find pictures of people with off-color signs and are pretty unambiguously racist statements. And so clearly there are some extremists at some Tea Party events. But an existence, switching to academic jargon again, an existence proof is easy. There are some. Are they the majority? Are there lots and lots of extremists? Should we think about the Tea Party movement primarily as racism? That's a much harder question, and I think the onus is on the challenge. And the only really systematic analysis I know of is by a grad student at UCLA, Emily Elkins, who, when I say systematic, she went to one of the Tea Party rallies and with a team of friends and colleagues and cell phones took pictures of every sign. So they have an archive of a huge number of pictures of every sign at one event. It's only one event, but it's hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And then they analyzed them, and they concluded that there really are very few of them that have any overt racial content. And in fact, even with a very broad understanding of what might be construed as racist, no more than 1% of them seem like they're racist. So she pretty much gave the Tea Party a clean bill of health, and that was quickly trumpeted on conservative, the Fox News and conservative outlets, the Wall Street Journal. And then immediately there was a backlash saying, well, she didn't go to the right event, or she went to an event where people knew. I don't think anybody knew that she was doing this in advance. This wasn't a well advertised, big name academic effort. It was one enterprising and clever grad student taking advantage of modern technology. But maybe she went at a point where there had already been enough discussion of racism that the activists were a little more careful about what they put on their signs. And I think the jury's out. So I'm going to waffle with the best of them here and say, I think, on the one hand, you can say where there's smoke, there's fire. Look at these pictures. There are some extremists out there at Tea Party events. That's all we have to know. And I would say, well, that's not enough, really. It's too easy to tar any movement with some extremists. There are extremists at every anti-globalization event. There were some people who were seriously upset about the power of corporations. There are some other nutso anarchists who really like throwing bricks through windows, and if there's an excuse to go somewhere and set fire to things, they'll do it. I don't think you take the latter people as representative necessarily, unless there's really lots and lots of them. And are there lots and lots of racists and white supremacists at Tea Party events? I'd say so far there isn't really any substantial proof of it. And let me go back to the report that had the forward by the NAACP. The cover is a photograph of a bunch of tea bags from events. Tea bags are a very natural prop at a Tea Party event. And they have little slogans on the I don't drink tea, so I don't know what it's called, but the paper thing that hangs off that you use to pull the bag out of your tea. And so one of them was Obama with a swastika. That's in poor taste. Maybe it's over the top, it's beyond the pale. It's not, in fact, a white supremacist symbol. People who are using swastikas as criticism are obviously not identifying themselves as Nazis. It wasn't Obama's one of us. He's got the swastika like we do, we neo-Nazis. So but maybe it's really distasteful to use a swastika to characterize an American politician, and that's enough that we should say that these people are out of control. Well, it reminded me that a year ago, Robert Gibbs, the presidential press secretary, had said in criticizing the Tea Parties, look, they're comparing the Democratic Party and President Obama to Hitler. Imagine if people had done this to Bush. And the Weekly Standard, the conservative magazine, immediately produced a montage of about 60 photos of people at protests, anti-Iraq war protests mostly, with Bush portrayed as Hitler, and said, yes, imagine. And of course, you don't have to have been paying very much attention to know that lots of people criticize Bush, spelling the name with a swastika and drawing and using the S, the H at the end of Bush to segue into Hitler. And equally, probably beyond the pale, sort of historically ignorant criticism. If you waste time on YouTube, at some point you probably have seen an excerpt from a TV movie about the fall of the Third Reich, where Hitler is in his bunker. It's the fall of Berlin. And it's become a cottage industry to dub a new audio soundtrack over this, so that if you Googled Hitler on YouTube, there are hundreds of these little sites with the same video clip stolen from a TV movie about the Third Reich, but with a different audio soundtracks. The first time I saw it was when Washington State beat Washington in the Apple Cup in football one year. It turned out Hitler was a big Washington fan, and there's a little bit with Hitler complaining about how the Cougars had beaten the Huskies. It's perfect footage, and it's an easy thing to do with modern technology to change the audio around. So this has been used over and over again. In fact, one of the things on there is Hitler complaining about Americans using him in political campaigns, with Hitler saying, "How dare they use my name so casually? I put all that effort into being the worst tyrant, the most evil person in history. And I had to compete against Stalin. I murdered all those people, and now they use me in this casual way, just as they disagree with someone, they call him Hitler. It's infuriating." So it is a fact of modern American politics. Then maybe it's a characteristic of incivility, it's over-the-top rhetoric. Lots of people get sort of tarred with labels that have no particular meaning. Calling Obama or Bush Hitler, I think, is equally silly and off of the topic of a relevant policy debate. But if you're really upset about the Tea Party and a few people at this event characterizing Obama as being a Nazi or Hitler, you ought also to have been upset about exactly the same sort of rhetoric at events that were critical of Bush and protesting Bush policies. So, my take on the Tea Party, without having done any I haven't done any of the empirical analysis like this UCLA student, and I haven't done a lot of time reading the transcripts of the events or looking over any documents. It's a very decentralized movement. It really isn't. It really is a movement. It isn't a party. Decentralized movements go in all directions. There isn't a leadership. Sarah Palin is clearly very well liked amongst people who identify themselves as Tea Party. She's not the leader of a party. And in that respect, it's hard to say with any, to get an accurate characterization of what do the Tea Party stand for. They stand for lots of things. Is it primarily about economics? I think so. And the one I decided to spare you from PowerPoint presentations and slides, but the one thing I would have had, I have a couple of maps, so I'm going to point at an imaginary map that isn't really here. But I have a map of Tea Party events that was constructed from meetup.com. So some grad students went and got all the events on meetup.com in the last year that were called Tea Parties, and then they removed anything that was actually a Tea Party. It wasn't a political event that was using the label. And if you look where they occur, they disproportionately occur where there's more population and so on. But one of the things that predicts quite well where they occur is the foreclosure level. Where there are more foreclosures, there's more Tea Party activism. There are more people who are going to events, they're going to rallies, they're writing letters, but they're going to, in particular, these meetup events. So are they people who are angry about the economy? Probably. What do we mean by the economy? Well, I'm back to my forecasters. There's lots of ways to measure the economy. There's lots of